They blamed the maid for the crime, but her genius exposed the real thief in court. Welcome back and enjoy the story. Maria trembled as the courtroom doors closed behind her with an ominous thud. At 24, she had spent a decade polishing other people's treasures while her own dreams gathered dust. Now she stood accused of stealing the very things she had meticulously cleaned day after day. The weight of the accusation pressed down on her shoulders as heavily as the stares of disgust from the gallery. Her employer, the prestigious Wilson family, had filed charges against her for the theft of a diamond necklace, worth more than she would earn in 10 years. As Maria's gaze fell on the prosecutor's confident smirk, a cold realization washed over her. In a room full of power and privilege, her truth might not be enough. The Wilson mansion had been Maria's workplace for 3 years. Its gleaming marble floors and crystal chandeliers stood in stark contrast to her tiny apartment in Chicago's South Side. Each morning, she arrived before sunrise, slipping through the service entrance like a shadow. Mrs. Patricia Wilson, with her perfectly coiffed silver hair and perpetual frown, treated Maria as if she were merely an extension of her cleaning supplies, a tool to be used and then stored away until needed again. Mr. Howard Wilson, a banking executive, barely acknowledged her existence, his eyes sliding past her as if she were made of the same invisible material as the air he breathed. Their son, Nathaniel, a business school graduate working at his father's firm, occasionally offered a distracted nod when he passed her in the hallway. Maria's daily routine consisted of dusting priceless artifacts, scrubbing bathrooms with marble fixtures, and polishing silver that was rarely used. The Wilsons entertained frequently, hosting lavish dinner parties where guests in designer clothing discussed stock portfolios and vacation homes, while Maria refilled champagne glasses, her presence registering less than the expensive furniture. During these gatherings, she learned to make herself invisible, to move through rooms unnoticed, absorbing conversations and observing behaviors that people displayed only when they thought no one of consequence was watching. If you are enjoying the story, type 5 in the comments and subscribe for more videos like this. If not, type 0. It helps me create even better content for you. Continuing. The day that changed everything began like any other. Maria arrived at 6 a.m., let herself in with her service key, and began preparing the house for the day ahead. Mrs. Wilson had scheduled a luncheon for her charity committee, so Maria worked quickly to ensure everything gleamed. As she dusted the display cabinet in the formal living room, she noticed something odd. The jewelry box where Mrs. Wilson kept her everyday pieces was slightly ajar. Maria knew better than to touch her employer's personal items without permission, so she continued with her duties, making a mental note to mention it to the housekeeper later. By mid-morning, the mansion erupted in chaos. Mrs. Wilson's screams echoed through the marble halls as she discovered her diamond necklace, a family heirloom reportedly worth over $150,000, was missing from her bedroom safe. Maria was cleaning the guest bathroom when she heard the commotion. She rushed toward the sound, cloth still in hand, only to find herself face to face with Mrs. Wilson's accusing finger. "You!" Mrs. Wilson shrieked, her face contorted with rage. "You're the only one who's been in here all morning." Security footage would later confirm this wasn't true, but in that moment, Maria felt her world collapsing as Mrs. Wilson called the police without hesitation. Would the sparkling diamond necklace be found in Maria's modest bag, planted there by someone who knew exactly when and where to strike? Or would the truth emerge from the shadows, revealing that sometimes the most obvious suspect isn't always the guilty one? Detective Oliver Barnes arrived at the Wilson mansion with 20 years of experience and a healthy skepticism toward accusations made by the wealthy against their staff. He'd seen this scenario play out too many times. Valuables disappeared, and blame immediately fell on the people who couldn't afford expensive lawyers. As he interviewed Maria in the kitchen, the only place Mrs. Wilson would allow her to remain, he noted the young woman's clear eyes and steady voice, despite her obvious fear. "I didn't take anything, Detective," she insisted, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "I've been working for families like the Wilsons since I was 14. My mother and grandmother were housekeepers too. This work is all I have. Why would I risk that?" Detective Barnes nodded, making notes neither believing nor disbelieving her yet. What struck him most was Maria's detailed account of her morning, the exact times she cleaned each room, where she saw family members, even small observations about items moved or doors left open that most people wouldn't notice. Meanwhile, the Wilsons demanded immediate action. Howard Wilson made calls to the police commissioner, whom he knew from charity galas. Patricia Wilson followed Detective Barnes around the house, suggesting places to search in Maria's belongings. Nathaniel Wilson appeared distracted, checking his phone constantly and insisting he needed to return to the office despite the family crisis. When Detective Barnes asked to see security footage from the home system, Howard hesitated before explaining that the cameras in the upstairs hallway had malfunctioned the previous night, conveniently the only cameras that would have captured anyone approaching the master bedroom. Despite this, and despite finding no evidence in Maria's possessions, the detective was pressured to take her to the station for further questioning. As Maria was escorted to the police car, she caught a glimpse of Nathaniel through a window, his face pale as he watched her, his hand tightening around his phone. Have you ever felt that sinking feeling when you're blamed for something you didn't do? Share your experience in the comments. The interrogation room at the police station smelled of stale coffee and desperation. Maria sat rigidly in the metal chair, fighting back tears, as Detective Barnes and his partner reviewed her statement. "Tell me again about the jewelry box you found open," Barnes prompted, sliding a cup of water toward her. Maria took a small sip, gathering her thoughts. "It wasn't fully open," she clarified. "Just slightly ajar, maybe half an inch. Mrs. Wilson is very particular about her things. Nothing is ever out of place. That's why I noticed." Barnes nodded, making another note. "And you're certain you heard Nathaniel Wilson on the phone that morning? Before anyone knew about the missing necklace?" Maria nodded emphatically. "Yes. He was in his father's study with the door not quite closed. He sounded desperate. He kept saying he needed more time, that he would have it by tomorrow." This detail caught the detective's attention. Just then his partner entered with a document. Maria's employment record showed not a single complaint in 10 years of domestic work. 5 different wealthy families had entrusted her with their homes and valuables without incident. Outside the interrogation room, the situation grew more complex. The Wilsons had arrived with their attorney, demanding charges be filed immediately. News vans gathered outside the station, the Wilsons' prominence making the case instantly newsworthy. Inside his office, Captain Reynolds pressured Detective Barnes to wrap things up. "These people have influence, Oliver," he warned. "The commissioner himself called me." Barnes pushed back, insisting on following the evidence. "Something doesn't add up here, Captain. The security footage conveniently malfunctioning, the son acting strange. No evidence in the maid's possession." The captain cut him off. "Then find the evidence, search her apartment. These people want results." Barnes reluctantly agreed to obtain a search warrant, knowing that Maria's life hung in the balance. Meanwhile, Maria sat alone in the interrogation room, her mind racing. Years of being invisible had taught her to see what others missed. She knew something about the Wilson household, something important, but amid her fear and confusion, she couldn't quite grasp what it was. Will Maria's keen observations uncover the truth behind the missing necklace, or will wealth and power succeed in making her the perfect scapegoat? The following morning brought new developments that sent shockwaves through Chicago's elite circles. After obtaining a warrant, Detective Barnes and his team searched Maria's modest apartment and found nothing incriminating. No diamond necklace, no evidence of sudden wealth, nothing to suggest she had any involvement in the theft. At the same time, a financial analyst working with the police department discovered something interesting about Nathaniel Wilson's records. He had recently made several large cash withdrawals and appeared to be deeply in debt to some concerning individuals. When confronted with this information, Howard Wilson became defensive, insisting his son's finances were irrelevant to the investigation. "My son graduated from Wharton," he growled at Detective Barnes. "He doesn't need to steal from his own family." Patricia Wilson nodded in agreement, but Barnes didn't miss the quick, worried glance she exchanged with her husband. Something had shifted. The Wilsons were no longer pressing for Maria's immediate arrest. Across town, Maria returned to her apartment, after being released pending further investigation. She sat at her small kitchen table, replaying every detail of her routine at the Wilson house over and over in her mind. There was something important just beyond her grasp, a connection waiting to be made. Maria had spent years being treated as part of the furniture, but that status had given her a unique perspective. She had eyes and ears in places where the Wilsons let their guard down. She remembered Nathaniel's increasingly frequent arguments with his father behind closed doors. She recalled Mrs. Wilson's anxiety medication dosage doubling in recent months. Most importantly, she remembered something about the safe itself, something that didn't make sense. With trembling hands, she picked up her phone and called Detective Barnes's direct line, which he had given her just in case. When he answered, she spoke with quiet certainty. "Detective, I know how the necklace was taken, and it couldn't have been me. The safe requires a family fingerprint to open." The revelation sparked a renewed investigation. Detective Barnes reviewed the home security system specifications and confirmed Maria's statement. The safe in the master bedroom used both a numeric code and biometric authentication. Only Howard, Patricia, and Nathaniel Wilson could open it, without triggering an alarm. With this crucial information, Barnes obtained a warrant to examine the safe's access log. The results were illuminating. The safe had been opened at 2:17 a.m. the night before the necklace was reported missing, hours before Maria arrived for work. The person who opened it? Nathaniel Wilson. Armed with this evidence, Barnes brought Nathaniel in for questioning. The young businessman's polished facade crumbled under precise questioning. Eventually, he confessed that he had developed a gambling habit that spiraled out of control. He owed dangerous people a significant amount of money and had taken the necklace intending to sell it to cover his debts. When his mother discovered it missing sooner than expected, he panicked and allowed Maria to take the blame. The case against Maria was immediately dropped, but the damage to her reputation had been done. News outlets that had eagerly reported her arrest gave her exoneration only passing mention. The Wilsons offered a settlement to avoid a lawsuit, which Maria's hastily acquired pro bono attorney advised her to accept. The money would help, but it couldn't restore what she had lost. Her dignity, jobs with other families who had heard the accusations, her sense of security in a world that had been all too willing to believe the worst of her. One evening, as Maria sat in her apartment, wondering how to rebuild her life, she received an unexpected visitor. Detective Barnes stood at her door with a small business card in hand. "I have a friend who works at the Cook County Public Defender's Office," he explained. "They're looking for investigators, people who notice details others miss, people with your kind of intelligence and perception." Maria took the card, her fingers trembling slightly. "You think I could do something like that?" Barnes nodded, with certainty. "I've been a detective for 20 years and I've rarely met anyone with your eye for detail. This system needs more people who understand what it's like to be on the wrong side of assumptions." For the first time in weeks, Maria felt something like hope unfurling in her chest. "Congratulations, type 9 in the comments so that I know you stayed until the end with me. Thank you for watching, and until tomorrow's story on this same channel.